The city was a cacophony of glass and steel, a towering behemoth of digital dreamscapes. Holograms painted the sky with impossible colors, while information flowed like a relentless river through the veins of the metropolis. Yet, in the heart of this hyperconnected world, Echo was an anomaly. Her small apartment was a sanctuary of the analog. Dust-covered record players shared space with a collection of cassette tapes, their spines a rainbow of forgotten memories. In the corner, a vintage typewriter sat silent, its keys like ivory teeth. Echo was drawn to the tangible, to the physicality of things. She was a tape whisperer, they said. A strange talent, an oddity in a world that had moved on. But to Echo, it was a gift. When she slipped a cassette into the player, the world faded. The hiss and crackle were a lullaby, and the voices that emerged were like old friends, their stories painting vibrant tapestries in her mind. Today, she was drawn to a worn, green cassette. The label was faded, the text barely legible. It was a find from a dusty, forgotten corner of the city's last record store. As she slid it into the player, the familiar warmth spread through her. She closed her eyes, and the world transformed. A rush of static, then a soft, almost ethereal voice filled the room. It was a woman's voice, young and hopeful. Day 172. The sky is a canvas of impossible blues today. The wind whispers secrets of tomorrow. We've planted the first seeds. Arcadia is growing. Colors bloomed in Echo's mind. A verdant expanse, touched by sunlight, filled her vision. She could almost smell the damp earth and feel the gentle breeze. The voice continued, a diary of dreams and challenges. A community building from scratch, a society where technology was a tool, not a master. But as the days on the tape progressed, a shift occurred. The once hopeful tone darkened. Fear crept into the woman's voice, replaced the optimism with a chilling dread. "They're watching us," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They know we're here. We have to disappear." The tape ended abruptly, the hiss and crackle growing louder before fading into silence. Echo was left suspended in a world of green, now tainted by shadows. Arcadia, this utopia on cassette, was lost. But why? And who were they? A chill crept down her spine. This wasn't just a story. It was a puzzle, a mystery waiting to be solved. And she was the only one who could hear the pieces. Echo was consumed by Arcadia. Days turned into nights as she replayed the tapes, searching for clues, for a reason. The woman's voice became a haunting melody, a siren song pulling her deeper into the mystery. The world outside seemed to fade. The cacophony of the city, once a constant, now felt distant, muffled. Her small apartment, once a refuge, was transformed into a portal to another time, another place. Then, a knock at the door jolted her back to reality. It was a man, a stranger with eyes that held a mix of curiosity and suspicion. He introduced himself as Silas, a journalist with a peculiar interest in the city's history. He'd heard rumors of a woman who could hear tapes. Silas was a relic of a dying breed, a man who still believed in the power of stories. His interest piqued Echoes, but she was cautious. After all, the world she was uncovering was dangerous. Yet, there was something about Silas, a spark of genuine curiosity, that made her hesitate. Perhaps, she thought, she wasn't alone in this. Maybe, together, they could uncover the truth about Arcadia. Silas sat at her kitchen table, his eyes wide with fascination as Echo recounted her experiences with the tapes. His curiosity was palpable, his questions pointed and insightful. It was clear he knew more about the city's hidden past than he let on. "Echo," he said, leaning forward, "I've heard whispers of Arcadia before. It was said to be a place where people lived off the grid, in harmony with the land. But it vanished, without a trace." Her heart raced. "What do you mean, without a trace?" "As if it was erased," he replied, his voice low. "The people, the buildings, everything. It's like it never existed." The gravity of the situation settled on her like a dense fog. The warm glow of nostalgia was replaced by a cold, hard knot in her stomach. This was more than a tale of lost paradise. It was a puzzle with a dark underbelly. Silas explained that DataStream had been aggressively buying up and digitizing any physical media they could find, claiming it was for archival purposes. But the sudden interest in these old tapes, the urgency of their acquisition, it didn't sit right with him. "They're hiding something," he said, his eyes intense. "And I think it's connected to Arcadia." Echo's apartment grew smaller, the air thick with the weight of secrets. "We have to find out what happened," she murmured, her voice shaking. The two of them, an unlikely duo of the old and new, embarked on a journey through the city's underbelly. They visited hidden cafes where the hiss of espresso machines mingled with the crackle of cassette players, and met with eccentric collectors who spoke in hushed tones about the value of tangible memories. Each tape they found, each whispered story, brought them closer to the truth. But the further they dug, the more they realized that Arcadia was not just a utopian ideal lost to time. It was a threat to the very fabric of the world they knew. And DataStream would stop at nothing to silence the whispers of the past. Echo and Silas pieced together the puzzle from fragmented conversations and rare artifacts. The tape spoke of a community that had discovered a way to live sustainably, a stark contrast to the energy-hungry cityscape that now sprawled across the land. They had uncovered a technology, something revolutionary, that could threaten the very foundation of the digital empire. The cassettes grew more urgent, the voices on them more desperate. They spoke of a corporate encroachment, a slow but steady march towards their sanctuary. "DataStream," they whispered, "they're coming for us." The final tape was the most chilling. The woman's voice, now heavy with despair, spoke of a deal struck with the corporation. In exchange for their silence, their way of life would be preserved, frozen in time. But it was a lie. The day the last tape ended was the day Arcadia disappeared from the map. The room was thick with the scent of burnt plastic and ozone. They had stumbled upon the heart of the operation, a secret lab buried deep within DataStream's gleaming headquarters. Rows of servers hummed ominously, cassettes piled high like the bones of a forgotten civilization. Echo's synesthesia painted a picture of chaos and destruction, the colors of the tape screaming in her mind's eye. Silas's hand was tight on her arm, his eyes wide with terror as they watched the digital vultures devour the analog world. They had to act fast. They had to expose the truth before it was too late. A plan took shape, a daring gamble to use the very thing that threatened Arcadia's legacy to bring it back to life. They would broadcast the tape's contents across the city's digital networks, letting the lost voices of Arcadia echo through the concrete jungle. Silas worked tirelessly, his fingers dancing over the keys of his outdated laptop, while Echo listened to the tapes, her eyes closed, her mind a bridge between the analog whispers and the digital world. The tension grew as they uploaded the final file. The room was a symphony of anxiety, the cassettes lying like spent shells around them. With a deep breath, Silas hit send, and the story of Arcadia began to spill into the digital ether. The screens flickered, the digital maelstrom paused for a heartbeat, and then the voices filled the air. The city's displays, once a canvas for mindless advertisements, now played the story of a lost utopia. The citizens looked up from their screens, their faces a mix of wonder and horror. The chase was on. DataStream's enforcers swarmed the streets, searching for the source of the signal. But the story of Arcadia was unstoppable, spreading from device to device, from mind to mind. Echo and Silas ran, the neon lights of the city a blur as they wove through the streets. The whispers grew louder, the voices of the lost community now a roar. They had become the champions of a forgotten world, fighting against the digital amnesia that threatened to consume them all. The climax approached, a battle not just for the soul of Arcadia, but for the very essence of human memory. The tapes had become a beacon of hope, a rebellion against the cold, calculating grip of progress. And as they reached the rooftop, the wind carrying the whispers of Arcadia across the city, Echo knew that the tapes had chosen them for a reason. They were the protectors of the past, the heralds of a future where technology and nature coexisted. They had one chance to change the course of history. With the city as their stage and the world watching, they would make sure the story of Arcadia was never forgotten. The rooftop was a jungle of antennas and satellites, a chaotic web of connections that pulsed with the digital lifeblood of the city. Silas connected the last of the cassette players to an old radio transmitter, a relic of a bygone era. He looked at Echo, his eyes a mix of fear and determination. "Are you ready?" Echo nodded, the weight of the tapes in her pocket a comforting presence. She slid the first cassette into the player, her heart pounding in time with the rhythm of the city below. The static faded, and the woman's voice filled the air, echoing through the metal forest. The cassette's warm, organic sound washed over the digital cacophony, a stark contrast to the artificial symphony of the metropolis. The words were clear, the story of Arcadia broadcasting from the heart of the very corporation that had tried to silence it. The chase grew more intense as they moved from rooftop to rooftop, dodging drones and enforcers. The tapes played on, each one revealing a piece of the puzzle. The whispers grew into a chorus, a call to arms for those who remembered a time before screens and wires ruled the world. As they reached the final rooftop, the headquarters of Datastream looming in the distance, Echo could feel the tension in the air. This was it. The moment of truth. Silas nodded at her, a silent understanding passing between them. The final cassette was loaded. The voice of Arcadia's founder, a man named Elijah, filled the night. His words were a declaration of war against the forces of digital amnesia, a plea for the world to remember. The cassette reached its end, the message complete. The silence was deafening, the digital city holding its breath. Then, a flicker. The screens across the metropolis flickered with static before the image of Arcadia's lush fields and smiling faces emerged. The city screens, once a canvas for mindless consumption, now displayed the promise of a different future. The enforcers closed in, their cold, mechanical steps echoing through the alleyways. But Echo and Silas had achieved their goal. The story of Arcadia was out there, sewn into the fabric of the digital world, a reminder of what could be lost if they didn't fight for the preservation of the past. Their hearts racing, they watched as the cassette revolution grew. It spread like wildfire, igniting a spark in the hearts of those who had forgotten the warmth of a tangible connection. The chase was no longer about them, it was about the message they had set free. The world below was a canvas of neon, the whispers of Arcadia painting a picture of hope amidst the gleaming steel and glass. And as they disappeared into the night, leaving the digital city to grapple with the echoes of a lost paradise, Echo knew that the battle had just begun. Days turned into weeks, and the story of Arcadia grew into a movement. People gathered in the streets, holding up cassette players like torches, the warm, crackling tunes an anthem of defiance against the digital tyranny. Datastream's grip on the city's consciousness began to slip, their monopoly on memories unraveling before their eyes. Echo and Silas became the faces of the rebellion. Their apartment transformed into a makeshift headquarters for the cassette underground. Each new tape brought more pieces of the puzzle, more voices from the past yearning to be heard. They studied the tapes, decoding the whispers of resistance that had been buried for decades. The air was electric with anticipation. Datastream had gone quiet, their usual barrage of digital propaganda replaced by a tense silence. Echo could feel the corporation's eyes on her, the cold gaze of a beast that had been poked from its slumber. One evening, as they sat amidst the clutter of tapes and tech, Silas spoke. "Echo, I think we've found something. Something big." He held up a cassette, its label worn almost to nothing. "It's a map. To the last piece of Arcadia." Her heart skipped a beat. The tapes, they're not just memories. They're a guide. The journey ahead was fraught with danger, but the promise of uncovering the truth was too great to ignore. They packed their bags, the weight of their mission heavy on their shoulders. As they ventured beyond the city limits, the neon lights gave way to the quiet hum of the night. The world grew greener, wilder, as if the very earth was reclaiming its lost child. The cassette in Echo's pocket grew warm, a silent guide through the tangled streets of the forgotten. The city grew distant, a fading memory in the rearview mirror. They drove through the night, the tape playing in an endless loop, the woman's voice a comforting presence. "Follow the river," she said. "Find the heart of Arcadia." The path grew narrow, the buildings gave way to trees, and the whispers grew stronger. They had arrived at the outskirts of the lost utopia, the trees whispering secrets of a time when technology was a servant, not a master. The final tape ended, the static echoing in the quiet car. They stepped out into the night, the warmth of the cassette in Echo's hand a beacon in the cold. Silas looked at her. his eyes filled with hope. "We're here." The forest ahead was dense, the path overgrown, but the whispers grew louder, urging them forward. The heart of Arcadia was hidden, but not lost. The trees parted to reveal a clearing, the moon casting a silver glow on a scene that seemed plucked from a fairy tale. A house, made of reclaimed materials, stood in the center, surrounded by a garden that flourished despite the years of neglect. They approached the house, the whispers of Arcadia guiding them like a lullaby. The door was unlocked, a silent invitation to explore the secrets within. The house was a museum of a bygone era, filled with artifacts of a life lived in harmony with the earth. Echo felt a sense of belonging, a connection to the lost community that resonated deep within her. In the study, they found it. A safe, hidden behind a bookshelf, the metal cold and unyielding. The tapes had led them here, to the heart of the mystery. Silas worked the combination, his hands shaking with excitement. The safe clicked open, revealing a single, unmarked cassette. The ultimate truth of Arcadia was within their grasp. Echo held her breath as she slid the cassette into the player. The room grew still, the only sound the rhythmic tick of a clock, a relic of a world that had moved too fast. The static grew, swelling into a crescendo before the voice of Elijah, Arcadia's founder, filled the room. His words were a revelation, a warning about the insidious nature of digital amnesia and the corporate greed that had led to their downfall. The tape ended, the room thick with the weight of Elijah's words. Silas looked at Echo, his eyes alight with a newfound understanding. "We have to get this out to the world," he said, his voice a whisper in the sacred space. They copied the tape's contents onto a USB drive, the digital and the analog uniting in a dance of rebellion. The journey back to the city was tense, the whispers of Arcadia a constant companion in the car's cassette player. They knew the stakes had never been higher. Once back in the heart of the metropolis, they faced a new challenge, infiltrating Datastream's digital fortress. The corporation had gone into overdrive, their drones and enforcers swarming the streets in a desperate attempt to silence the growing tide of dissent. They met with a group of analog rebels, a motley crew of hackers and artists who had heard the whispers and were ready to fight. In a cramped, candlelit apartment, they shared their findings. The room buzzed with ideas, the cassette culture now a full-blown movement. Echo's synesthesia painted a picture of the city's digital veins, a complex web of data and secrets. Together, they formulated a plan to upload the truth of Arcadia to the city's mainframe, to make it impossible to ignore. The night of the infiltration was a symphony of shadow and light. They moved through the streets like ghosts, dodging the prying eyes of the corporation's drones. The air was thick with anticipation, the whispers of Arcadia growing stronger with each step. They reached the Datastream building, a gleaming monolith against the night sky. Silas led the charge, his fingers dancing across the keyboards of hacked terminals. The screens flickered with life as the story of Arcadia began to spread, infecting the very system that had sought to erase it. The alarms blazed, a discordance of sound that pierced the night. Enforcers swarmed the building, but the rebels were ready. A battle of wills unfolded, the digital world clashing with the analog. In the chaos, Echo found a quiet corner, her cassette player a beacon in the storm. She focused, letting the whispers guide her. The final piece of the puzzle was within reach. The screens throughout the city flickered again, the story of Arcadia playing out in vivid detail. The citizens watched, their eyes wide with disbelief and hope. The digital veil was lifting, revealing the lies that had been woven into the fabric of their reality. The enforcers closed in, but the whispers grew louder. The tapes had done their work, the message of Arcadia a wildfire in the minds of the people. The digital city trembled, its gleaming facade cracking under the weight of forgotten truths. Echo and Silas emerged from the building, the dawn breaking over the city. They had exposed the corporation's dark secret, sparking a revolution that would reshape the world. The tapes had been more than a glimpse into the past. They were the seeds of a new future, a world where the digital and the organic coexisted in harmony. The whispers of Arcadia had become a roar, a call to action that could not be silenced. And as the sun rose over the gleaming towers, the first tendrils of green began to push through the cracks in the concrete, a promise of what was to come. The cassette culture had become a symbol of resistance, a reminder that memories were not just data to be stored and forgotten. They had started a revolution, and the echoes of Arcadia would be heard for generations to come. The city changed. It wasn't an overnight transformation, but a slow, steady evolution. The towering glass monoliths still stood, but their screens now displayed more than advertisements. News broadcasts alternated with documentaries on sustainable living, on the history of technology, and the importance of preserving the past. Data stream, once a behemoth, was reduced to a shadow of its former self. Its logo, once a symbol of power, was now a cautionary tale. The company was forced to invest heavily in green technology to rebuild its reputation on the foundations of trust and transparency. Echo and Silas became unlikely icons. Their story was told and retold, their faces plastered on every screen. They were the champions of a new era where balance between the digital and the physical was not just a slogan, but a way of life. Echo's apartment became a museum, a testament to the power of analog in a digital age. The cassette players, once symbols of resistance, were now prized possessions. The city's libraries were filled with shelves of tapes, their content carefully preserved for future generations. Arcadia, the lost utopia, lived on in the hearts of the people. It was a symbol of hope, a reminder that humanity could coexist with technology, not be consumed by it. New communities began to spring up, inspired by Arcadia's ideals. The world was still a complex place, with its share of challenges. But the foundation had been laid for a future where technology served humanity, not the other way around. And as they watched the city transform, Echo and Silas knew that their journey was far from over. The whispers of Arcadia would continue to reverberate, a constant reminder that the past is not something to be forgotten, but a treasure to be preserved and learned from. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, consider subscribing to stay updated with our latest stories, give us a like if you want to see more, and drop a comment below to let us know your thoughts.